This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 22nd of October 2019, and I am 2J.
I am 2M.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are.
Mm-hmm.
We heard a rumor that you were in DRC.
Oh, yes, I was.
Is that true?
I was in Kinshasa.
Ah, did you have a good time?
Oh, fantastic.
Did you come back with Ebola?
Clearly not. And if I had, I would infect then lots of you.
Let's hope not. In the Standard, the Masters of Double Speak, Daily Nation, U.S. bars graft suspects, drug lords put on notice.
Yeah.
In the Star, Umbeta, the day I almost died.
Lots of dramatic headlines.
Yes, and also very varying headlines.
Yeah.
Should we begin with the Standard?
Yes.
The Masters of Double Speak, and here they're referring to Uhuru, Raila, and Ruto.
And Ruto, yeah.
You know, I mean, what do people expect? These are politicians.
But before you get into that, I think a bit of the context here is that they went and looked back at the Naivasha constitutional talks that happened in 2010.
Yes.
And they're referencing the things that they said then and the things that they're saying now. That's why they're calling them Masters of Double Speak.
Precisely.
So, for example, all three of them had previously said that they were for a parliamentary system.
Yes.
And now they've all gone back and said, so for example, they say here that Ruto said that he was comfortable with the parliamentary system, but now he's saying that he's not. The same with Raila, the same with Uhuru.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's unfair. We've said this many times.
You see, I can hypothesize. If Raila Odinga was very okay with a purely presidential system in 2010, it is probably because he knew he was a front runner to
the next
election.
Yeah, but his gamble failed in that case.
Absolutely. William Ruto knew that in case Uhuru Kenyatta wins, he can be a prime minister. And he'll be in a position of leverage. What these people do is they set constitutions so that they can be able to benefit in the future. It is normal. They're politicians.
Politics is a game of personal interest and personal gain. It's not about cooperation.
Yes. So I quite liked the use of doublespeak, the conscious use of language, because at the Fifth Estate we always say, you know, there's a narrative being created, there's all that stuff going on. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
I thought it was an interesting story, but a more interesting headline.
So we have a three-part criteria that we use to break down the headline. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
I think it ticks all three boxes for me so far.
Yes, although I think people should be encouraged to see it in a positive way. Doublespeak doesn't necessarily have to be negative, because you should only a fool doesn't change his mind.
Exactly. When the facts change, I change my mind.
Exactly. So we'll keep that. In the Daily Nation, U.S. bars graft suspects, drug lords put on notice. It's an essay on the...
It's a mouthy headline. Context of this is the U.S. ambassador Karl Makata was giving an interview to a man called John Kamau. And there he said that they will be barring corrupt individuals and drug lords because they will be spoiling America's name out there. And then I thought to myself, look, who is the biggest consumer of drugs in this world? It's the Americans. The Americans spend $150 billion, right? The combined GDP of Kenya and Tanzania every single year on bangi and cocaine. If the ambassador is very keen on having a clean America or making it look like Jerusalem, then I think the best thing he should do is stop Americans from flying to other countries.
Wow.
The other thing it sheds light on is story number one, what this means. Mombasa-Nairobi Expressway would be delayed as a result of Kenya being in a debt crisis. So last week we have Uhuru Kenyatta launching this outstanding expressway.
And then a few days later,
the Americans sort of saying, actually, we have to wait because your debt distress is or your country is in debt distress.
Exactly. They said that we've hit the debt ceiling, and until we're able to deal with our debt, they will not be giving us the money. So my question was, if we raise the debt ceiling, will they give us the money? Because I think we're on the way to do that, aren't we?
Let me tell you, the last person I would ever listen to right now as an emerging economy are the Americans or the Brits, because there's a reason why South Korea, Taiwan, and the Asian tigers are where they are right now. It's because they did not listen to the Americans. I don't think this tone, I don't like this tone, we are going to ban graft suspects. We don't like Kenya's debt ceiling. Jesus Christ, we should not be getting frameworks from Westerners. I think we should be able to give our own solutions to get our own economy going, and it's not going to be from their
As much as that's very nice, and that might be based on fairy tales, the reality is we need their money.
Exactly. And let me be
but it's as a loan.
Let me be devil's advocate. Kenya is trying to balance between new infrastructure, but they have a very real hole in their budget, right? That they have to find financing and all that stuff. So we can't also just do away with them. So we need to strike a balance.
I'm actually, my point is, let's not do away with them. But I think people should be restricted. Kenya has come so far. We cannot be dictated to. I don't just like the tone. I think they should just focus on giving people visas, and that's it. This thing of telling us how to run our economy, I mean, who the hell are they?
But it also forces the Kenyan government to look for alternative sources of financing.
Very
so
true.
We go back to the markets. Let's figure it out.
However, I think we're agreeing we're tossing this.
So in the Star, Mbeta, the day I almost died.
Such a dramatic headline.
It is, but he was also representing the Akashas. So it was an interview that he did. And he sort of outlines how the CIA, FBI, and the Americans had a hand in harassing him. And they say they put guns to his head at some point, and basically all because the Americans were trying to extradite their Akashas, of which they were eventually successful because I think they got about 25 years in prison. I felt like it was a PR exercise on Mbeta's part. He came out looking like, listen, it wasn't my fault they were extradited.
It's them, not me.
I'm a good lawyer. The Americans were forcing us, and I mean, it's timely because it's Spy Week here at the Fifth Estate. We're looking at all things espionage, so this fits, but...
Absolutely. I think this is a great advertisement for Cliff Mbeta.
It is.
I'm sure his office phone is ringing like hell today.
I will say though, I think that the story isn't so interesting. I think the headline, I think they were trying to pull a standard like last week.
Using
short,
an interview,
punchy headline, with a blown up picture of the interview. I don't know if I really like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we agree that we toss it then?
Very far.
All right.
We'll toss it. Please. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a three-part criteria that we use. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Victor Ndula.
This is Ndula. And I think Ndula is in a time zone.
I think he's a bit lost.
He's a bit lost. And anyway, before we analyze it, let me describe it. It's a drawing of a football field, a goal post. And right next to the goal mouth is a brick wall, and it's blocking the goal post. And it is the caption there is open for business. And the advertisement behind the goal post is Sport Pesa, Stop Pesa, and beating.
I mean, this is 2 weeks too old. Had he done this then, I think we would have laughed and appreciated it, and it might have won winning cartoon. But 2 weeks down the line, it's old news.
I think people are probably now feeling the effects of no money in sports in terms of what they used to sponsor.
Exactly. That's true.
Perhaps
even bars. I was taking a drive the other day around bars, and literally there's nobody.
You went in the bar, just driving around the bar.
Around the streets.
And there were no people in the bars, that's what you're saying.
People go to bars so that they can watch the money they have placed.
That's true, I know. The same thing I saw was that there was a lot of youth who were crossing the border into Uganda to avoid that 20% levy as well. So as we said before, Kenyans are very smart. They're ingenious. Exactly. They're going to find ways to circumvent the law.
Yes, absolutely.
So for lateness, we toss?
Yes, toss, please.
Now, caricature. Ozone. Caricature of Baba himself, Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, and William Ruto. And Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga are happily handling the BB for BBI, and William Ruto is reluctantly holding the I for BBI. And the caption there is me, myself, and I.
This was a very confusing cartoon for me to understand. There was too many layers to it. So is he involved in BBI? Does he want to be there? Has it been imposed upon him?
I had a hypothesis. I thought he's implying in order, so right now isolated is the me, myself, and I is DP, but I suspect they still need him for the success of building bridges. I thought that's what he's alluding to, like that space needs to be closed between them.
No, I think they're painting a picture of William Ruto
as isolated.
He's being forced to take a position that he doesn't want. But I think if I was William Ruto, I'd just think, what if I would have so much power within a parliamentary system. Look, even if he was to go today as president, he would only have one person as a running mate, and he can only choose from two tribes, the Kikuyu or the Luyas. And if he decides to choose one, the others will go with the Raila and Uhuru. I think at the end of the day, point is, it may just benefit him.
He might be in a hard position. And I think this is a lot of what is in Gado's cartoon today, isn't it?
With the
It's a similar narrative.
So we have a handshake.
Yeah.
On one side we have Raila, on the other we have Uhuru.
Yes.
And then we have Arab Mashamba, RUTO, in the back, and he's either trying to pry the handshake open, or he's trying to squeeze himself in, or he's trying to get out. I can't really tell.
Yeah, we can't tell, and I think that's part of the...
I can't quite tell, but I think it's that thing of RUTO is going to be instrumental in the success of BBI, and I think that is inevitable.
Whoa.
That's true. Whether he's stuck in the middle or he's trying to get himself in, he might be.
And he's been on the ground for the last year. His ability to amass any kind of
following,
it's
incredible.
I would go the getting him in the picture route,
true,
as opposed to isolating him.
So we had to compare the two cartoons.
I think I think
I would go with the standard because I think
I'd go with Gado.
Yeah, I like the mirrored ideas, but this one I think is too hard to understand.
Okay, there you go. Gado of the standard gives us our winning cartoon today. Fantastic. And what is our final thought?
And now our final thought, inspired by a book entitled "The Enemy Within: The History of Espionage" by Terry Crowdy.
Yeah.
Summary.
So as GK said earlier, this is Spy Week, Espionage Week. We're going to look at all those things spy and espionage related. But just like we said last week, we have this new collaboration with a new partner called RAFU Books. So if you go to rafubooks.com, a lot of the books that we've been discussing previously and we will continue to discuss on this table will be available for you to order. That's rafubooks.com. They do a lot of same day delivery in Nairobi.
And they're in East Africa as well.
So please do check them out.
Absolutely.
So yes, this book written by Terry Crowdy in 2006. It is a book that takes a very detailed look into the history of spies, spy masters, and espionage, starting all the way from the ancient ages through to the end of the Cold War and beyond. However, the thing about this book is that it's more of a narrative and giving anecdotal stories more than it is analytical. So maybe I think we could fill in some of those gaps. However, it is a study nonetheless on espionage as something that governments should really focus on and that they have and should continue to do. So 2,500 years ago, Sun Tzu advised that knowledge of the enemy can only be obtained by other men. And therefore, one should always know their enemy. And so he looks at the role of intelligence collection in the creation and sustaining of the Persian, Roman, Mongolian empires, and even offers Judas of Jesus, Judas as an early example as a double agent, which I thought was such an interesting spin on it. So he says that one of the earliest references of espionage dates back to the times of Pharaoh Ramses and his battle with the Hittites in 1274 BC. So he states that while spies are best known for collecting information, they are also used and sometimes best used in misinformation to deliberately mislead your enemy.
Absolutely.
And so he takes us to the Bible as another example of where spies existed, as evidence that espionage existed in ancient Egypt. And so he looks at the book of Deuteronomy, and records show how Moses, before embarking into Canaan, sent out spies, and he quotes from the Bible, to see what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. Do your best to bring back some information from the land. And as we know, the spies returned, and they said that the land was very plentiful, but that the inhabitants were giants whom the Israelites would not be able to destroy. And so this left the Israelites roaming, as we know, in the wilderness for about 40 years. And then he gives us another example of the first account of the first female secret agent in the Bible, or in history we might say, and that was Delilah, of Samson and Delilah. And so we know that Samson was a very strong man, and unable to defeat this strong warrior, the Philistines resorted to devious means to bring about his downfall. And so their opportunity came about when Samson fell in love with Delilah. And so the Philistine rulers went to her and they said, see if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength. Each of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver in order for you to find out. And so she agreed, and she found out that his strength came from his hair, that it had never been shaved, and that's why he was so strong. And so she contacted the Philistines, and eventually they cut off his hair. And the last thing I'll talk about is how Sun Tzu tells us that all warfare is based on espionage. And that for him, the argument about espionage was less about strength on the ground, but more about the economics of war. He said that the cost of fielding an army was too enormous. That if you were to march 10,000 men into an enemy space, it would cost you 10,000 ounces of silver every single day. And so in addition to this, as many as 700,000 families would be affected by the presence of the army, so that that daily work would be affected and it would reduce the taxes that you were able to collect.
Absolutely.
So he says that a lack of intelligence could prolong wars for years and years if a general was uncertain of his enemy's whereabouts or about their condition.
Absolutely.
And so he says that the most critical and humane thing for a general to do is to focus on proper intelligence and after that the interpretation of that intelligence.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, there was a man they called Wilhelm Steiber. This man is regarded to be the godfather of espionage, right? And this guy stays in Berlin and becomes a police inspector.
Yeah.
And when he's inspecting crimes, he realizes that every single lead that they get from a crime comes from a prostitute. and he gets fascinated, by this thing they call high-class prostitution or something like that. And he says, now, if I want to get intelligence from the ground, what I will do, I have to get a prostitute on my side. But what will they profit from? How will they benefit? And genius guy comes up with this idea called, and he names it, the Prostitutes Recovery Fund. And this was a fund to cater for prostitution and prostitutes.
Who gave information?
Yes, who gave information?
Not generally.
Just generally.
Precisely, you know. And the idea here was to regulate prostitution because it was seen as a vice. And by regulating prostitution, they would get a lot more money than they were getting before. In turn, the police were also embedded with the prostitutes. And each and every crime before it happened or even after it happened, Wilhelm Steiber would be able to come to know about it. But also the second thing he did, and why he did this was because traditional methods of espionage produced such limited results. So that's why he needed to use prostitutes. But the second thing he also did, he also realized that journalists were very important in espionage. One is because in their line of work, it would be very hard for you to suspect a journalist because they would ask questions, probing questions, and you say, it's just journalists doing it. But also he realized journalists were also very broke. And they needed a little bit of money to get their work to get their job going. Now he decided he's going to establish a farm, a media farm. And then during the 1850s, there was a company called RUTO, which still exists today. How do you call it? Reuters. I cannot say Mugili. Anyway, Reuters Telegraph opinion company. And what these guys did, they controlled public opinion. They had a monopoly over people. Remember what you said about this information? It's not just about getting information. It's also taking out information there and making it and twisting it and manipulating it for the public.
For the masses,
So he established one, and before you know it, this man was actually able to control public opinion.
Fantastic. And so in this book, chapter 6, he talks about Napoleon Bonaparte. So everyone knows him as the greatest general of his time. But he was actually a spy master supreme as well. So he inherited this thing called the Central Register. And so basically it was a system of funneling information from the very bottom, the division chiefs who used to do local intel and information gathering, and pass it all the way up to the commander-in-chief. And he had these everywhere, right? And for him, it was vital to achieve the goal. So why the need for spies? To achieve the goal, which is to always mislead the enemy on what he wants to know and to learn what he has an interest in hiding. One can only use spies for this. So that's the only way you can find out this information. And he used to say, use as many spies as possible. Ensure that they are given the clearest and most concise and complete instructions. And that a record is made of all their declarations. So everything they ever found out was put into this Central Register, which always passed up to Bonaparte. And it reminded us of Moy, how he would collect information from the most remote places, right? And those district chiefs and lower had so much power because of that information. So the other thing he says is that there are 5 classes of spy one should employ, or that's what they used in that time, right? One, those with a complaint of the opposing government. And these were usually highly educated people that you would send into enemy territory, but also that they had good judgment, so they were able to report back to you what they were reading. Number 2, those who became spies out of a sense of duty. And now he said here, these were good spies because you could reward them with honor. And I think Bonaparte came up with the Legion of Honor as a medal that he would give give his greatest.
So you're not giving them money?
Yeah, for them it wasn't money. But there is a class of people who were into money. And these were the people, the third class, and usually the most numerous. So from any country, and could be from any sex, like male or female. And these were people with no principles. So they would sacrifice their country to their debauchery. Whether they gambled, they were greedy, they were corrupt, they were officers of the enemy army, but they were doing things for money. So here how you lured them was, who's the highest bidder. And then he added to this list priests and women. You've already mentioned how women have been used. But priests were unlikely because you would go and confess and you wouldn't think that they would go and take your secrets elsewhere, right? And the fourth class were the professional spies, right? And these were, very good at what they did, but their job was that they could also be double agents. So they had to be kept away from what was called the central register, where all this information was being kept, right? And 5, those who spied out of fear, which was also a large number of them. They usually came from the peasant class, and these were people who you could see something of theirs that was so personal. So property, members of their family, you could use this to make them go and spy on enemy territory. And the other thing is that they would go and trade in enemy territory. So under the pretext of trade, they would be able to get information from you. And he said, listen, rarely rely on one deposition from one spy. So he would compare stories from 2, and he would take only that which was a coincidence, that they both, they wouldn't have known was coming, right? And the other thing was, you must always give a spy what you promised him, right? So in order, and treat them better than the enemy would. So it was very interesting to see that part about Napoleon.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
That's just the beginning on the history of espionage.
Yes, it is. So on a day where we had a double win for the Standard with their headline and their cartoon from Gado. So to gain the upper hand in conflict, the ability to know what your enemy is planning is vital. Stay with us as we look at espionage, the spy world, and the use of deception in other territories, right? And please subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on TV. We are on GoTV, Star Times, and Pan. Free to air. Have a good evening.